All right, we're sitting down today with Jackie Hirsch of Crown Atlantic Business Brokers, headquartered in Orlando. Thank you for coming up here to sit down with me on Lever Up.
Paul, it's a pleasure. It's truly an honor to be here. It's been fun to follow you on X. I love your snarky, witty, but educational comments.
Unfortunately, I'm about the same. Anyway, everybody wants to hear about your story. We bumped into each other probably 6 or 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Heavy. Anyway, I'd love to hear about first how you started up Crown Atlantic and your origin story.
It's been an interesting journey. I don't think anybody betted on the 22-year-old female business broker doing well over time. I don't think that was a thing. I answered an ad in the paper to work for a business broker. I had graduated and I had a degree, but he was hiring 4 people at a time. And I went into kind of a bullpen situation and everybody made fun of me. It was super unpleasant. And then I just ground it out and started selling more than everybody. And I knew I looked different than the other brokers. And my clients didn't seem to mind. So it was just the other brokers that seemed a little bit bothered about it. But I just kept doing it and I loved it. I had always wanted to have my own company when I was a kid and own pieces of companies. And I do that now. I've had this since 2004. I went out on my own at 26.
Wow.
And now here I am. I'm on your podcast. I've sold hundreds of companies, 400 companies.
400 companies.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
So what do you think, when you first got there, were you selling someone else's listings or were you having to find your own listings?
Both.
Both.
Yeah,
okay.
Mostly I had to find my own listings, which as a 22-year-old is a little bit daunting. And then sometimes they'd give me stuff that no one else wanted and I'd sell it.
Give me an example.
I sold this cafe that was in this building. That was one of my first deals. Then I sold this video company with VHS cameras. So this is how long ago? 1998. It's a long time ago. I sold a VHS video company. They had a Disney vendor number. And the person who bought it really wanted the vendor number. And he owned a bunch of companies. And then I would sell, large retail facilities. I sold something in a tourist area. And then I started getting into industrials. So then I worked on a plating company. And that's kind of where I fell in love, construction, manufacturing, all the industrials. And that always kind of spoke to me. My dad at one point did have a company. He was a rocket scientist.
Literally
A rocket scientist, which I'll talk about later. But and he had a company for a short time, which he did manufacturing and had a truck. And I just loved it. As a 6-year-old, it was just incredible.
But my father was a tool maker. And so we had a machine shop in the backyard in North Carolina. And he'd take me out there and I would just play, nobody would let their kid do this anymore. I was opening toolbox, finding die and punch sets from the 50s or 40s. I actually bumped into a jar of cyanide one day because you said plating was actually what made me think of it. And he was like, "Yeah, don't touch that. We use that for treating metal." And I was like, "What is that?" He's like, "Yeah, it'll kill you." And I'm like, and I was like 5 or 6. I just banging out in the shop. Okay, so what was the market like that made you say, "I want to go do this for myself"? Ostensibly, you could work there in perpetuity, a little bit safer.
Okay, here was the path, right?
Yeah.
You always talk about what the origin story and the path is.
Yeah.
I was hired by a broker, and I didn't realize at the time he was trying to build his brokerage so he could sell it.
Okay.
So this guy had a stable of brokers. He was trying to expand it a bit, hired some new talent, then trying to sell to this other broker. Then it transacted maybe 10 months later, and I worked at this other company for 4 years. It was just a real culture mismatch for me, ultimately. Yep. And it became painfully clear I needed to go. I was their top agent. I would get paid less, all this stuff.
One of those.
and it was a very unpleasant, kind of abusive, toxic environment, your classic toxic environment. And as a 26-year-old, you just deal with it. You just think that that's how the workplace is. But it got to a point where I was like, okay, I can do this on my own. I was closing a large deal. I did it with my own money, completely bootstrapped, and just started. And it was a little daunting. But we can do hard things and you can rise to the occasion. I'm sure people thought it would fail. And the other brokers, some of them were really nice to me. And every now and then they'd drop a piece of advice. It was like a breadcrumb. And I would savor on that and subsist on it for months. I would constantly read. And it's the same as now. I constantly read. I listen to about 20 hours of podcasts a week.
Wow.
It's still a big learning curve. I'm always learning. I think my clients love that. I'm always coming up with ideas and encouraging them. Why not? Why not want people to succeed? That was not the environment I was working in. It was time for me to do my own path. And then that allowed me a lot of things. But 2004, we had a series of hurricanes in Florida. I don't know if you remember that. Back to back. So that's right when I launched and went out. And then it went well for a few years until like 2008.
Oh God. I didn't
right.
think
So I had
about
to
that.
survive that.
What was that like? 'Cause nobody wanted to transact anything then. They just wanted to hold it, right?
Yeah, they were holding.
Yeah.
So they were holding, and then at that point in 2009, I started a nurse registry company. So I had that going. So I had multiple companies, and I meet my husband, or my now husband. We meet in 2009, and then we got married in 2010, and in 2011 we had a kid. So the market was down, but life was good. Life was good.
Yeah, I was at an oil refinery during the crisis, and I never even felt it because you got to make gas.
Yeah.
The prices went crazy. Gas went up. I remember my commute bill went up $250 a month, which was meaningful to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to take Turnpike Exit 3 to Turnpike Exit 13A in Jersey, and like gas price had doubled or something, but I never felt that like insulated. I can't think of worse place to be from a structural, because what I know now is nothing transacted there.
Yeah. Well, I still would sell some stuff.
What was selling
It was
then?
just like pizza places. You'd still have some construction businesses sell. I would still sell I sold a metal manufacturing company. Like I would still sell stuff, just not as much. And then, I had this other business. I get married, but in 2009, I showed a company. It was like a 20,000 square foot facility, and in the middle of the facility, they had a nursery. And I was like, oh, dear God, can we just walk past that room one more time so I can photograph it with my mind? Like I had never seen anything like it. And at that point, I had sold like at least 100 businesses, if not more, probably a couple hundred at that point. And we somehow had to backtrack through the facility and see that again. And I took a picture with I remember even what I was wearing. And the next year when I got married and then I got pregnant, I made sure, because I owned my office, that I had a duplicate nursery at the office. So when I had Melina, I breastfed live at the office with her, and she'd sleep at the office, she would play at the office, and I worked full time with 2 companies. So sometimes I'm like, I hear people and like, oh, I'm so tired, I have a new child. And they're like, they don't have a job outside the home. And I'm like, how'd I do that? How'd I do this grind?
Bananas.
It is. Right? and she stayed there at the office for almost 3 years. She's so healthy. She's so talented. She's just spectacular. I don't think I could have done that with multiple kids, but I could do that with one. And it was because I saw this facility. So many years later, I called that owner and I said, I just want to thank you. You changed my life. Like
That's
you planted
wild.
a seed that I didn't know was possible. And nobody was doing that. Like bring your kid to work or like a work from home. That wasn't going on in 2010, 2011.
Do you still have a picture of the nursery?
Somewhere.
We should, if you could find it, if you don't, if you
I
have
will.
a digital, find it, we'll flash it up.
There was a crib, there was a bookcase, there was toys. I had stuff on the wall. Like there was, like it was a little preschool. I had like pictures of different things.
Yeah. I remember building my kid. My kid's special needs. I built him this like enclosed playroom at the house that was like fully dedicated to him. That was supposed to be our dining room at the time. The like 2 thoughts. What you said. I've heard some people say it's not the first kid that ruins your career. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree with that. I think you can do anything still with one kid. It's when you add a second kid. It's not doubling, it's exponential. And then I know one investment banker friend that I have, and she has 3 kids. She's incredible. I don't know how she does it. She does have some help. Her husband is very hands-on and is able to work from home, but she's just exceptional. She's exceptional. I love being friends with her.
A friend of mine that has 5 children has the other. He's like, the 3rd kid is the hardest. At 4, they scale.
Yeah.
He's like, once you hit the 4th kid, they start scaling. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Having a basketball team of kids. Right? It's just like,
And I'm one of 4. So like it wasn't, but with one, you can do anything. And she comes with us everywhere. She's just a spectacular individual. Like I'm super honored to be her mom. Like I just feel like she's a total gift to me.
so the big question that I didn't prep you with that I should have, because it just came up over extra time. It's very relevant to you. Valuation of smaller businesses.
Oh, I love this. I love talking multiples.
There's been
because,
there's been debates everywhere where it's hopefully I'm going to pick on them. The P operator guys, you're not going to transact on a business unless you pay 6 times. I just went to a management presentation for a business we can get for 2 times, and that's 5. That's 5. Now it's they do analysis analysis for water. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Water analysis business for a non-ESG friendly industry, that's in heavy oil and gas. And so the valuation is lower. And they had a little hiccup one year. One of their clients went bankrupt. So what do you tell people that the other side is? Obviously, people just probably call you a lot and say, I want to sell my business.
Yeah.
How do you manage seller valuation expectations?
Okay, so this is so interesting. Seller valuation expectations have really changed over the years. And then they might know somebody who sold their business for 10x. Well, 10x what? Was it 10x EBITDA? Was it 10x EBIT? Right? Did they take out a CapEx portion?
Yep.
Was it 10x SDE? Is it a normalized salary? Like, were they paying themselves? Like, I have a seller that pays himself $500,000 salary.
Yeah.
Right. So like a normal salary for that job would be 150. So you can normalize that and add that to the bottom line as an adjusted EBITDA. And you have to first understand, what are you multiplying? So that's the first thing I do, is you try and show apples to apples instead of apples to oranges. And then also they have the story, my friend sold to private equity at 10x. And I said, well, what are the details? Well, I don't really know. It's kind of like when you're in middle school and somebody says that they have a girlfriend at camp and you don't go to that camp and you've never met them. Okay, this is what it equates to me, right? So normalizing that, showing comparable values, which you can find, like there's a number of databases that we use. You can actually find comparable sales data, but also you can run the numbers. You can look at discretionary earnings. You can do a cash flow analysis. You can really show what the business is making and how at a certain price, somebody can't pay back the debt service, or they can't pay themselves back in a timely manner, even if they borrow from themselves. So it's a series of things that we show a seller. It's not just one item, and you have to educate them. You can't just refute them and tell them you're wrong.
Yeah.
What's harder than valuation these days? Buyers are more sophisticated, even the smaller buyers. For like my $1 million EBIT deals, for my $500,000 EBITDA deals, the buyers are much more sophisticated.
Wow.
And an individual buyer is fighting private equity, strategics, competitors,
A 500K EBITDA business.
Independent sponsor add-ons, private equity add-ons,
Oh.
corporate refugees. Right, that's what I call them. Like they're
Corporate refugees?
Yeah, corporate refugees. They're like,
Somebody-
I'm leaving.
I'm
corporate
leaving
life.
to buy exactly what I'm doing right now.
Correct, but I will have pretend freedom. And they do in a way. Like, you get to a point in corporate life where you realize you maybe can do something different. And if you have deep skills and have really run a bunch of stuff and led a team and have knowledge in an industry, you can really crush it on your own if you're willing to take the risk.
It's very different, though.
Of course.
It's just very, just worried about the payroll was a stress I never anticipated. How much of a much more burdensome stress is than we've got. It
is
$50 billion under management at the time when I first got to the big firm.
Well, that's why I like to invest in veterans. They have done hard things. They've probably almost died a few times and made it. They often are married and have kids, so they've survived like a lot of tumultuous things. And you talk about like getting prepared for something, getting prepared to buying a company. It's no different than getting prepared to have a child. You don't know what's coming.
You don't know what's coming.
You don't know how hard it's going to be. And you have to do it. You can't just be like, I really feel like feeding you today.
So what's your version of what to expect when you're expecting if you only had one book?
I love this. When you buy a company, you have to be flexible.
Okay.
You have to be open-minded. You have to suspend reality in some senses, because you have to find the magic and the creativity. Not everything is found on a spreadsheet. This is some of the problems with private equity running a company, is they believe everything can be figured out on a spreadsheet, and it takes the magic out of the company. An individual can do that differently. They can keep the magic. When I went to wilderness camp as a kid in Ocala, you're taught, food, water, shelter, and mental self-control. I believe, with Marcus Aurelius and meditations, you have to keep that mental self-control to handle all sorts of things coming at you that you didn't expect.
Okay.
You just don't expect what's coming at you. And that's where somebody who's a deep problem solver, who's good with people, who can lead a team and their team respects them, they can really succeed and do well. But there are things that, I didn't see COVID coming. I thought January 2020, it was going to be an incredible year. And it was.
It was incredible.
Just wasn't what we were expecting. And some people really blossomed and flourished, and some people died. literally and in business.
Businesses just went. I interviewed somebody like 2 years ago that he bought an optical business, and his name's Sean, and like right before COVID, it just died.
Yeah.
Right. Payroll. I want to circle back to valuation.
Okay.
When you're having these discussions with sellers, have you ever rejected a seller because of valuation? I don't
Yes,
really need this.
many
Okay,
times.
walk me through that,
Yes.
because that would be, because you don't want to disappoint them, right?
I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to insult them or disappoint them. Sometimes some companies are like a bad movie, right? There was a lot of time and effort and a lot of people who worked on it, and people watch it and they're like, this is terrible. I feel like people look at Sims like that. You're looking at the confidential information memorandum and you're like, how did this even last? So when you look at a company, I try and see it from a buyer's perspective and share that with the seller. So I'm really still trying to educate them. Hey, this is why I think the business is worth in this range. And it's never like a dead on number. It's a range. And it could be this, or sometimes there's a big working capital swing, which, in the middle of the year. And that's something else. Buyers are more sophisticated. It's really hard to explain to sellers that there's an amount of working capital that belongs with the business. Right now, I'm even working on like an 8.5 million EBITDA business. And even that concept to them was better because they could see it with their numbers, that they know that there's an amount of capital that has to circulate within the business. And I explained, if somebody comes and buys that business on day one for 60 million, whatever,
Yeah.
and then they have to bring 4 million, well, aren't they paying 64 million? So I have to explain those concepts. So if somebody tells me their business is, worth this because their friend who had the girlfriend at camp sold it for this, I do try and dissect that in a logical way, in a non-emotional way, because this is like a bespoke creation that they created. I don't want to insult them. It is spectacular, especially if it's, only 4% of businesses in America gross over $1 million in sales.
Wow.
Okay, it's a very tiny sliver of these businesses that are transacting. There's maybe 20,000 transactions a year?
That's less than I thought it would be.
It's not that many. That's nationally.
It's 20,000 of all business or 20,000 over $1 million?
No, 20,000 businesses, I think, nationally transact. I think that's the stat. Wow. It's not a lot.
There's 2,000 PE firms in New York
Correct.
City.
There's 2,000 sponsors at the McGuire Woods conference.
It's bananas. And 20,000 transactions? That's...
So here's the conversation with the seller. There's a company I'm working on right now. He thinks that it's a niche business. He's willing to go to his competitors and put it out there at a higher price. So we're going to run a process, no price, to the competitors, right? Run that process and get that auction going. It's not going to hit the market to the public. It's not going to be seen by sponsors, private equity. It's just going to be seen by competitors. Really unique process.
That's usually the
Super
founder
unique.
never does that.
Super unique. But because
He
of
thinks
what
he
this
can maximize
business,
valuation.
yes, because of what this is, and I can't say what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll tell you offline. But because of what this is, it's if you can't recreate it magically, you can't drop a bunch of money in a city and recreate it.
Interesting.
And so that's when I see those processes. But I spoke yesterday at SM Boot Camp. It's owned by Sam Rosati, who I think you should meet. I think you guys would have a lot of fun, getting to know each other. And he's an incredible educator, really an incredible teacher. But I talk about, how to win with some of these deals. But I started listing a lot of my deals. None of them are on the market. You won't see them because I ran a process very quietly, very quickly, very silently, and it's pending. That's what we do.
What's your, from when you get a signed LOI in one of those types of processes, how fast do you encourage the buyer to close?
I don't like to force. I know people say time kills all deals. I think it needs to be done in an organized, measured, realistic process time. Okay. There are things that need to be done. There was a deal I did last year, and this deal had so much drama. Totally unrelated to the buyer and the seller. Totally unrelated to the two of them. It reminded me of a wedding with a family that was super dramatic, but the bride and the groom are fine. Okay, so in that deal, it could have closed in 60 days. But we had 3 different landlords. One was owned by this REIT. One was like some other, collection of companies, and they were transacting the building. So we had all sorts of problems with the estoppel. Then the other building was owned by these 2 people who passed away since the seller had owned it. And then it was, then the heirs were like second wives and nephews. Okay. 2 unrelated parties, and then it goes to like 7 unrelated parties. Okay, so dealing with that group was very hard. So you had a lot of different systems. And then both the buyer and seller kept going out of town for different stuff because they both own multiple companies, have multiple things going on. And that deal took 6 months. It should have taken 60 days. It's just what it was. Happens sometimes.
I was looking at a media ad on, I don't know, this is like 6 years ago or something like that. And I think it was pre-COVID. And this founder like ghosted on us. And I was like, did somebody talk to him or something? He was on a couple million EBITDA. His cat died. He just like was really like this. The cat died, and he was like all hung up on the man. Which I mean, I'm not making fun of it. It was just I thought we were doing everything wrong, or somebody said something or offended him, and he's like, yeah, sorry about that. And my cat died. And
well, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with like emotional trauma in your deals? Like, your deals are still with people, right? They still have personal owners, right? It's not always you're dealing with like a second tier company. Yep. You're sometimes dealing with the original owner. And how do you mitigate their feelings on the deal? Like, how do you do that?
For me, doing that, the only thing I do is I tend to only go in factories. I tend to ask a lot of questions on the floor, and I've seen 250 factories now. They're way more worried they're disproportionately worried about legacy, in my opinion. It's like, I thought you sure you don't want just a turn, like a turn extra, right? I know I'm harping on valuation. I have to ask this. You work across manufacturing and construction and some restaurants, services. Which industries, like where's the money hide, or like the financials the worst, or is it pretty much you've seen like I guess some turds everywhere?
Yeah, like construction, I think, is challenging because the WIP is not always what people want to see. Or, we're selling a pool manufacturing company, and they start a job in 2025 and they finish it in 2026. Yep. So it makes the numbers all wonky, and people have trouble like running their model because it doesn't work right. It breaks sometimes in the middle of the year, and the WIP is up and down, and the working capital is up and down. So all of those different things, construction's challenging. But then like we sold a roofing company, and the owner was like, I really could use a boathouse. And so they just expensed it in the cost of goods. It was like $250,000. And that $250,000 probably cost them $1 million in purchase. Because it was probably a 4X, and they didn't get $1 million for that $250,000 in tax savings.
That's so if somebody comes talk to you, I got 30 questions to ask you. If somebody comes talk to you and say, I want to sell my business in 2 years, do you start telling them to pull out that stuff that they were saving? Okay, walk me through that process.
Okay, so this is a really hard thing to convince a seller to do. I'm trying to convince them to not maximize their taxes. I'm trying to convince them to not put their trip to Japan as an expense. I'm trying to just have them let it fall to the bottom as profit and take the profit.
Take the loss. Take the tax loss.
Take the tax loss, pay the taxes, show what the business is really making as if you were a real company and not running it like your personal piggy bank. And that's hard to do because they've been doing their own system for a while. And they really need to start doing that 3 years in advance. I really want 3 good years. That's kind of what I need. And banks, they're not businesses, right? So they love a 3-year upward trend.
Right.
And that's not life. That's not reality, but that's what they want. So I'm always trying to deliver that. So I try and convince them. And I did this recently. There was a company that I sold. I sold one location in Orlando and one in Texas. And I tried to convince them, hey, I need you to stop commingling. And they're like, well, what do you mean, right? So they'd commingle a bunch of different things because they own multiple companies. It was like everything's got to be in its own entity. So they started doing that in 2021. So by 2025, things looked great because they had it all organized and ready to go. And the sellers who listen really make a lot of money from the things I tell them because I have seen so many companies, hundreds and hundreds of companies, like, hey, have you thought about doing this? Or, hey, have you thought about doing that? There was one company where they had a place where chefs could come and look at their products. And I said, hey, why don't you have a square that the chefs can just, buy? They have a company credit card. They would make them get a PO and da-da-da. I was like, chefs are impulsive people. These are like passionate people. If they see your vanilla from Madagascar in a big container, they want it.
Yeah.
Right?
They're insensitive to price.
Yeah. So they did an extra, and they were doing like $7 million in revenue, but they did an extra 300,000. Like, why not?
Okay. So I heard cleaning up the community piggy bank.
Yeah.
What if you've got, let's say 2 years, what are the is there any other high leverage changes you can make to increase your SDE, or EBITDA, whatever you want to call it, that are, kind of bang for the buck, time in, time out to help, increase value, not valuation, but purchase price?
There was an engineering company I sold, and he just didn't like collecting receivables. He would just work on it like every 6 weeks. He would make some calls and get receivables, or like put them into QuickBooks and like organize that. So his stuff looked all weird, but it wasn't. It was actually spot on. So we had to recreate that and the quality of earnings and like really do a look back and like date that to show that he was just, I don't want to say lazy. He would just like,
it's a non-preferred task for most people.
He would need to do that. And I think really looking at customer concentration, that's a big issue, right? It's easy. You have this big customer, you've been working with them for years, and they're 50% of your business. What happens one day when they go away? And that does happen. So you need to diversify. You need to collect groups of different customers from slightly different industries if possible.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. And then, maybe I see this all the time. The owners, they'll let a receivable go 120 days, but they'll pay their payable the next day. The next day.
It's wild.
And so it makes their numbers look weird. And then when you try and do like the working capital or calculate net working capital, it's off.
You get the DSO and the DPO
so you have to kind of get them to normalize that. And that's actual physical changes that they have to make. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. It's hard. Change is hard, but people can change. And people do change. People grow, people modify, and I see it all the time. So it is all possible, and that doing these little incremental 1% changes can super maximize your value.
So that's it. So let's pivot over. I went to the McGuire Woods conference the first time in 2023. Was it 4? Anyway, I think 23, and I hear it's like doubled since.
Yeah, I was supposed to go last year, and I couldn't make it, unfortunately.
What the independent sponsor space is clearly growing. And it's also like you're not going to probably compete for an $8 million EBITDA deal if you're an independent sponsor for your first deal, unless you've got, stapled financing or you got some sort of commitment papers. What advice would you give to a new independent sponsor? Where should they play? What kind of businesses should they buy? We can unpack that in a second, but
I help independent sponsors beat out private equity all the time.
Okay.
It's so fun to help them beat private equity.
Do you steer a deal toward independent sponsors or to PE?
Sometimes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little bit more fun.
Why? It's more risky for the client, isn't it?
It's more risky for the client, but you have to mitigate that risk, just like everything else. So when I introduce a seller to an independent sponsor, you're right. They have deep industry experience. They have, capital providers that are ready. They either have committed capital. They'll share who is funding them, what family offices, what cap stack, if they're SBIC, they'll share that, right? The independent sponsor you have to worry about is the one like, well, I can get the money. Money's no problem. Okay, that's always a problem. Money's always a problem.
It's always a problem.
So when they can share that and we can talk about it and they have deep industry experience and they're personable and they'll care for the team and they'll be nice to the seller and they're flexible and they're interesting, that is a winning combination. They can 100% beat out private equity. The private equity, they'll send in their fleet. They might send in like a robotic person and invest. And then they might send an operator who hasn't necessarily been in these meetings. They can operate, but they're not polished enough to talk to the seller in a meaningful way that's not scary.
Yep.
Because I've seen operators.
They ask scary questions. I've seen operators kill deals.
Yeah. Same.
100%.
Same. When they make a move, they can stealthily take the deal from private equity. And that McGuire Woods conference is teaching people to chip away at the private equity deal. Now, we still need private equity. They will still do larger deals, but these add-ons, these smaller, like sub 10 million EBITDA companies, like independent sponsors.
You think
are
sub 10?
Yeah.
Interesting, because the one we just did was 5.5, and it should be 10, and it should be 10 on 50, and we bought from founders. And do you recommend? I guess what kind of seller is right for an independent sponsor? Is it straight founders, or is it like? Because a lot of times you'll see like 4 kids that own a business too, which is kind of hard to get something done too. Because one or two of them want out. Like, walk through the dynamic. I guess better. What's a red flag situation for an independent sponsor that goes? The seller dynamics you should just walk. Because I torched a lot of money last year on that.
There was a deal where I felt that the seller could not manage their emotions in a way that would be fun for someone to work with. I felt like they would yell at people and they would yell at me. And I'll take some yelling. I don't mind. Like, I don't mind a heated discussion, but I don't think it's necessary in this scenario, especially if nothing's really going wrong. But I think that's a red flag. Like, can you work with this person? They needed that person to stay on. I just felt like it would be a super unpleasant work environment. So certain things like that. There was a metal company in Miami where I realized that the wife was sleeping with the accountant. That was a red flag. I walked away from that deal. There was, is that too inappropriate?
No, it's
Okay,
fine.
all right,
It's
fine. All right.
you've seen it all, I'm sure.
Yeah, you see all sorts of stuff. I mean, there was a deal. Actually, I recently helped a sponsor get over a private equity group. I told the seller I thought they were more fun. I think the deal will take longer. They'll pay you roughly the same amount, and I think you'll enjoy working with them more. So I was able to do that. But the red flag for the seller is like they're a little bit greener, and they're not moving fast. And they use all the right people. They use like big, QV provider, big law firm. But that part's been challenging. But
Okay.
other red flags, God, there's so many. Okay, I had a deal that I walked away from last year. I called the seller's attorney. I said, I do not want commission from this deal. I do not want to be paid. I do not want to be a part of it. I do not want a referral fee. I do not want my name on this deal. This is an M&A attorney in Miami. He had never had a call like that from a broker, and he was very surprised. Really? Yeah. It's a mid-sized firm in Miami, but you probably know who
I
this
know.
guy
I
is.
know who it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was very surprised, but I feel like my reputation goes on these deals. I felt like the accounting was jacked. They wrote off like $400,000 in inventory, like based on nothing. Just the accountant saying, I think it should be this. No counting. No real, like, there was no table. There were certain things, and then how they'd book inventory and book different items and track books and expense things. The numbers were a mess. And then I felt like the buyer was sketchy. Like, there weren't enough showers in the day after speaking to this guy on the phone. Like, there just weren't. And so ultimately I was like, I just don't want to be a part of this. And I called the seller politely and I thanked him for the opportunity. And I told him he was very surprised. I'm sure he felt like he did something offensive. He didn't. I actually liked him as a person, but it just wasn't the right fit for us and what I wanted my name on. But yeah, I'll walk away from a deal if there's like low integrity flags.
That's super interesting. Let's go the other direction. Let's go positive.
All right.
Where's the time you gave? Is there a time you gave somebody like a 6x valuation expectation? It came back at like 11, or like you're just hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
Tell me that story.
There was a deal I did, and I felt like I could get 7,
Okay.
but then offers started coming in at 9.
Okay. How much EBITDA?
1.5.
Whoa.
Yes. Yes.
But you felt like
but
you
you're
did
talking
7.
about like recurring revenue stream. You're talking about like deep recurring revenue, old business, super stable, right? And so we're getting like 9 on that. And they really could take their pick of who they wanted. And so they picked who they liked. And that's the other thing. I don't think sellers I don't think buyers understand that a lot of times a good broker helps the seller make the match, right? Pick the buyer, right? You have to bet on a horse. I don't want to exhaust my seller. I don't want broken deals, and they happen. But I'm going to bet on the best horse, and I'm going to bet on the horse that's nicest to work with. Why not? Why not make the deal pleasant?
Yeah, they're one of the ones I lost last year. One of the ones I lost last year was two gentlemen had a pharmaceutical manufacturing business, and we were signed LOI, already spun up attorney's fees, and the capital provider, they're dropping them off at DFW. If you've been to DFW, you know it's got like the wonky, all the TSA entrance. They go, and this was $6 million EBITDA business. They go, we each want $1 million salaries when we stay on, and he's like, get out of the car. I'm getting me out of the car right now. And they were just seeing if they could get it. And he just like walked away. And I had an incident earlier when we met him. We used a placement agent to meet this guy, meet this team. And I called my partner, Bo. I'm like, man, I snapped on those founders too much. It was first time. I think I've messed up and killed this for. Those guys turned out to be the most annoying human beings I think I've ever worked with in my life. Deal broke. I was probably out $250 in broken deal cost. And so that said, I don't necessarily know if they're I don't think they were very forthright with their business broker. And I think they misrepresented some things that changed the valuation of the business quite a bit. So what do you do in that situation? Like, because like sunk cost fallacy is a thing, right? So how do you manage that? That process. So I was looking at that from February of last year, and it finally broke in September. And so why is that? Can you get it over the line? Like what were you situations like that?
You know, it's just like any relationship. Sometimes you just can't fix the relationship. And you have to look at it that way. I think you got away cheap. Could have been way worse.
I think if we would have done the deal, it would have been way more money. I think it was a blessing. That was expensive. And
so I see that. And that can happen on the buy side too. I did a deal where the buyer, this guy just went awry. And he delivered the seller an employment agreement. And in the employment agreement, we had caught this guy in a few small lies, and things just were really unpleasant. He felt like I worked for him full time. Like he wanted an hour plus meeting with me every day on the deal. I have other deals I work on, and some days do require an hour a day, but not on a Zoom call to go over every single item. He put a non-disparagement clause in the employment agreement that was $1 million per instance. I don't even think Brad Pitt has that. Like, it was just insane what he was expecting from the seller. And the seller said, I just can't even sign this. And the seller was like this really good guy.
Wow.
The LOI, it was a 90-day exclusive LOI. We were at day 100, and we were literally a week and a half away from closing. We were just doing some fine tuning on the SPA, and he walked, and this guy freaked out. He freaked out.
The seller walked?
The buyer.
The buyer walked.
The seller walked. The buyer freaked out.
Okay, got it.
And started like calling the company and asking to speak with them, sending stuff to their homes. Like, it was insane. And I had to like call him and say, we need a cease and desist. I brought one of the partners on the call, and I said, so-and-so's on the call with me. And they said hello. And I said, we are not moving forward with your deal. We are ending this deal, and we wish you the best of luck. We are not moving forward. If you've ever had to like end kind of an abusive relationship of sorts, this guy, you can't give them any entry into something they can overcome an objection, right? You have to like, this is mutually not good for us, and we are not moving forward, and we wish you the best of luck. And you're like closing it out, but it can make them lose their mind because you're not giving them reasons. But we were able to do that. We called his attorney, and said and the attorney
so wild.
Knew he was so bad, the buyer's attorney called and apologized to the seller's attorney because he didn't want his reputation to be tarnished. He said, this was how I was instructed by my client, and I just want you to know that I was really following the instructions, and while I would try and guide him, these were his instructions to me.
That's wild. Did you ever bump into them again?
No.
Oh, thank God. Right? You know what I mean? That's
No.
like somebody like you avoid if you see the grocery store.
Absolutely. No. He lives in Miami.
Oh, that's like it's big enough.
Yeah. Like, I don't, yeah. And I don't know what he's up to, but I do know that the former seller's wife, anytime somebody's like a complete a-hole, she uses his name as like the name.
That's the proxy name
yeah.
now. Oh,
like
yeah.
that's how bad it was. It was super unpleasant. But it happens.
I didn't have it so bad. I didn't have it so bad last year. Then. Let's my next pivot. What do you think private equity buyers get wrong when they're engaging with founders in the size range you played? You said just say the size range again so everybody knows it's current. What do you say, 1 to 10 in EBITDA? -ish?
Yeah, 1 to 10 in EBITDA.
Yeah. What do you think private equity buyers get wrong when they're talking to founders in that space?
The way private equity loses the deal is okay, I'll give you an actual example. There was an HVAC company I sold.
Okay.
Okay. So HVAC in Florida.
It's kind of hot down
Okay.
here. It's hot figuratively and literally.
2021. Okay. So like even a crazier market. I had 9 LOIs in a period. LOIs in a period of 4 days. And
How big was this one?
this was like, I mean, we're talking like,
2?
no, like 750 in EBITDA.
750K in
Yes.
EBITDA.
Okay, small. I had a $100 million HVAC company. I had strategics. I had private equity. I had individual buyers. I had searchers, like people from all over the country. I had people in closed for business states because this is during COVID, trying to leave those states and come to Florida. Okay. So it was a huge amount. I think it was 150 NDAs in 24 hours. I had to shut down everything.
Oh my God.
Because it was so crazy. I had COVID at the time.
You had
Personally had COVID, and I was like running this deal from my bed. No joke. Like my husband would come in and take the laptop out and say, "Jackie, it's time for you to take a nap." And then a few hours later, he would wake me up with like some broth, and he's like, "Okay, here's your laptop back." Like he's like the best husband a girl could ask for.
That's amazing.
So I was running this deal from my bed, literally, and sweating it out the whole time. The seller's like, "I need you to pick 4." So we had 4 face-to-face meetings.
He just asked to pick 4 because he wasn't going to do 9.
He wasn't going to do it. He couldn't do 9 meetings. The seller was not.
Wait, let's back up. You had 120, 120 NDAs?
150.
How many IOIs did you get?
I didn't.
You didn't even take them?
No, I didn't even take IOIs because like I couldn't. So we had LOIs, and you know when I prepare a sim, it's a deep sim. It's not like one of these skinny, documents with 0 information and all the numbers are jinky. Like this is real, legit, deep numbers, deep information that you could make an actionable decision based on what I prepare. It's deep. I do a great job. And an NDA right here, like when we're done, and you'll look at one of my sims and you can see what they see.
I'm super excited.
Yeah, because you'll see it's not the normal business broker process. It's deep. Anyway, so we pick 4 people. I had this private equity guys come in from Manhattan. Okay, they're coming in from Park Ave.
For 750K?
Yes, because they owned 2 other HVAC companies in Florida. They're trying to do an add-on and get Orlando.
Oh, it was Orlando based.
Yes.
They were. It was a white space for them.
Yes. So
Okay.
we had everybody coming in for this small deal, right? Then so these
How many
2
trucks?
guys-
20?
No, yeah, like 17 trucks.
17 trucks.
17
Okay, all
trucks.
right, we gotta
yeah.
get the scope
Yeah,
now.
so yeah.
Yep.
They own the property. Property is included. Okay, so like lots of good benefits for this. Deep team, been around for 30 plus years, like everything anybody could ever want. This deal had it. It was all the specs, everybody's checklist, everything, this is my buy box. So, so there was that. These guys come in and they're wearing this ridiculous outfit. Right, they're in Manhattan, so they think they're wearing casual suede sneakers. It's October in Orlando. It's like 90 degrees, right? Because sometimes October's hot. Like they're just totally not dressed for the occasion. A vest, like ridiculous. They just looked weird. They had like the fiberglass hair, and then they come in and they're like doing all this like private equity nomenclature. They're asking KPIs. They're asking all sorts of metric questions.
I roll trucks. We fix broken air conditioners.
And my seller, this guy was really smart. Like he was no joke. He was an engineer. And
He was an engineer.
Oh, he was very.
He was like he was a mechanical engineer, just specialized in HVAC.
Correct. This guy was incredible.
Were they being condescending?
Totally.
Oh my God! It's just like
Totally
everything
condescending.
you could do wrong in a deal. Every box checked.
And my seller's like, I don't want to see them again. So there was that guy. Then there was this other guy who has a $100 million HVAC company. He comes in a suit because he also flew in from a big city. And my seller's like, my guys won't talk to this guy. So then I had these other people, they wanted to do an SBA deal. And my seller was like, no SBA. Then I had this company and they bring in their intern from Vanderbilt. So I was really miffed because he was wearing a vest. He was super nice.
Okay.
He was super nice. And then they brought in their operator. And the operator was like your dream. He was like your dream guy. He started asking the seller, hey, do you prefer like the train facility or the carrier facility? Like, who do you work with there? Like, do you find that the parts are more reliable from this facility? Like, who do your guys like to work with? And like, do your guys sometimes team up on some of the bigger jobs? And when you're doing new construction, like, does this happen? And like, do you have homes with like multiple mini splits? And like, how are you dealing with that?
Oh, that's a deep question.
Right? Like, but like, a kind question, not like, so like, what's your, percentage per hour? Do you have like a shop hour of time that you allocate per job? Like, these deep KPI questions can lose the deal for private equity. And the condescending, and I know everything, and wearing the wrong outfit can lose the deal. Like, what do you show up with? You show up to the deal in sneakers or boots, jeans, short sleeve shirt, because it's hot, right? So you have to know what to wear. And if you're wearing something else, already it's a signal like, this might not be for you.
So there was a team member who had clearly never been to a factory before. And I was like, I need you to get some steel toe shoes.
Yes.
Bring to the site. He doesn't, go get them. And I was like, we're going to go by Walmart and get some shoes. And then I went up meeting at the site because I forgot what I had to do. And I was like, can you scuff them up just a little bit on the top of the shoe, right? And now my shtick might be a little too much. I have prescription safety glasses, and form-fitted earplugs, and my own steel toes. But I always do, and I do wear my dress shoes. But then I'm carrying my steel toe boots with the bow and the knot tied together.
Yeah.
Why it just seems like such a mess. So my deal partner at the big shop, he got that. He was at 2 different industrials firms for 20 years. Certainly the best deal guy I've ever seen in a plant. And he was really good at asking like leading happy questions to founders. Do you know what I mean? Like, wait, so you're telling me this thing goes inside micro motion meters? Right. You know what I mean? And he's like, yeah. And he kind of like elevated. Why do some funded sponsors miss that? They're not stupid.
I don't know. When I went to this machine shop, I sold this machine shop in Alabama, and this guy used to, he had the 5-axis mill on site, but he also would make parts with a lathe. It's almost like a custom handmade part. It's like a statue, like a hand-carved statue.
Yeah.
He was just incredible. And some of the private equity guys just didn't understand this. Like, they didn't understand how deep the craftsmanship ran. And maybe it's because they don't ever do hands-on activities. I sold a roofing company to a private equity guy that left private equity and wanted a roofing company. And he laid the pavers in his yard. Like, he got it. Right?
Okay.
He understood.
He's actually got his dirt under his fingernails.
Right.
Before.
And I think that makes a huge difference. Like, there's certain things that I know I'm willing to do. Like, I'll get on a roof, I'll go in an attic, but I will not go in a crawl space. I don't mind spiders in the attic. I do mind spiders and dead cats in the crawl space. Like, I have problems with that. Right. So like, there's certain things that you should know you're willing to do. But I feel like some of these private equity guys sometimes feel like they're too good for it. They're too good to like hop in the truck, fix anything, or really go deep with the guys, or understand the craftsmanship and the level of talent. You're not just smart because you went to a big school and you can run a spreadsheet. There's other smart people on the way.
It's interesting. We just bought, and this will come out after we announce, we bought 16 dental labs, and I've been to every site, and I've done ride-alongs with 7 people post-close, like 6 or 7 people post-close sales reps, crawling up dentists, watch them break the there's the gatekeepers there to get back and talk to the dentist. I did 70 flights last year. I've done 32 this year, and it's February 26th as we're recording this. I think something hit me. The Generalist PE fund, the 10-year closed-ended fund that does tech, media, telecom, healthcare, industrials, and consumer like split. I bet that drives it instead of the specialist fund.
Specialist funds do well, but the generalists sometimes can win because they can cross-pollinate ideas across industry.
Oh.
And it really is a breeding ground for all these different ideas. I feel like this is one of my superpowers in matchmaking. I do all sorts of different types of deals. I've set up people in real life. Like I've 10 marriages under my belt. I don't get paid for that. I don't get paid for that. But you cross-pollinate ideas of how something can be better. So I sold this roofing company and they penciled gross margin for each job with the sales rep. And the sales rep would be paid based on the gross margin.
Yep.
And I said to one of my friends who owns a millwork business, are you doing that for each job? Right? They're two different jobs. Or you can look at the recurring revenue SaaS stream and how they support their customers. And you can bring that to a project-based business. The generalists are winning because they're getting knowledge from all sorts of different places. And those CEOs all talk to each other in the fund. They're their own group, usually on a chat, and they can share ideas non-competitively and share, exchange information that can support each other. And I think a super powerful support system that every CEO needs is some sort of group.
Well, it's lonely, right?
It's very lonely. A group that does either what you do in a non-competitive area or different industries so that you can cross-pollinate ideas. But that's how the generalist funds, in my opinion, are winning, is they're cross-pollinating information.
At the McGuire Woods conference, and I forget which consulting firm's reports, I won't say, said that generalist food firms are going away. You disagree?
I disagree completely.
Okay.
You look at something like Minds Capital. Minds Capital is an independent sponsor fund. And they put in, like in Fund 2, they're putting in $1 million in each deal. They have completely different deals, everything from SaaS to Christmas lights to they have they own a piece of this breast ultrasound business. When they closed, I'm a member of the fund. I wished them all breast wishes. I'm probably the only member of the fund that could do that and not be impolite, but they did think it was funny. And, so they have a whole different way of looking at things. And then also I'm in this venture capital fund. They're also generalists for the venture capital, everything from tech to nanoparticles to biomedical. I don't think generalists are going away. There might be more specialists, but I think being a specialist sometimes sounds boring, to be honest.
I can't even believe you said that to me.
I think it sounds boring.
It's there's an old book called The Magic Thinking Big.
Yeah.
That if you ever read this?
Yeah, I love that book.
If you go deep enough on any topic, it goes from boring, or it goes from moderately interesting to really boring, and then if you get deep enough again, it gets interesting again.
Agreed.
So it's like you have to go like really
deep. And every business is different. So like, let's say you're just acquiring dental labs. None of them will be the same, even in your package, right? You went to these 7 locations. They're not the same. And if they're in different physical locations, the people are not the same.
It's I did a ride along in South Dakota, and 100 miles west of Sioux Falls.
Wow.
I went up to Green Bay earlier in January when it was negative 17 and negative 35 wind chill and that like blizzard. I went to Santa Barbara during diligence, and
nice.
then and one in Greensboro, and then there's one in Shreveport, and they all have different personalities.
Totally.
And then this is the first time that we just placed a head of IT in the business, and he's amazing. This is the first thing I've ever looked at where I said my first hire has to be a head of IT.
Yeah.
In 20 years, I've never, ever had that thought.
Wow.
And it was, And so when he started, and they just love him, and his father was a dentist. So it's just like, it was the IT guy's father. It's like literally perfect. And okay. I don't want to miss anything. If you could force every buyer to adopt one operating principle during diligence, what would it be?
Self-awareness.
Okay.
If we just had that, I think self-awareness of what you really need to know in your diligence process besides the numbers, that would be a big help in the deal. I feel like sometimes diligence keeps going because they're not asking the right questions of what they need for their soul in order to kind of sign off on the deal.
I got a slide I'll send you. It's the, what do I need to believe for this to make sense?
Yeah.
Right? That if you don't constrain that to 3 things and there's a certain amount of time, you will just keep spinning and eventually find something that will make you second guess it.
Agreed.
I was at one thing 5 or 6 years ago. It was a huge safety problem. It ended up killing the deal for the firms. They didn't want to take the risk. I wish we hadn't found it, because if we found it and we were stuck with it, I could have fixed it. And I forget if it was, what's its name, Andreessen or somebody said, if you keep digging on enough on a deal, you'll find something that'll kill it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's good advice. Maybe it's foolhardy.
It's just like when you're dating somebody, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. And so everybody can be a big pain in the butt, and you have to decide what's going to work for you and what you can tolerate. To me, I think finding that relationship, and this is maybe personal about me, it's like someone you can't live without. Like you don't want to live without. You could live without them, but you don't want to live without them. Like that's how it should be. And when you're looking at a business, okay, it's going to have some warts, it's going to have some hair, and sometimes the more hair it has, the more money you make. But there has to be some magic to it. And I feel like that's where private equity like quelches some of that magic, some of those inconsistencies, some of those inefficiencies. Like one of the companies that, the home services business that we know, they send out this really bougie olive oil with every service. Like strange, but it's a little bit,
but it's interesting.
It's a little bit fun, and nobody else is doing it.
I guarantee the wife's call them back again.
Yeah.
I mean, what 75% of consumer purchasing goes, it's like, well, I never expected to get olive oil.
Right. And it's like nice quality. It's not some bad stuff.
So that's an interesting question. Point is that if you look at me, when I look at the make our drinks at Starbucks, they're bouncing around from place to place to place. That's on purpose. They could Chipotlify, if that's a word, the Starbucks.
Yes.
But I don't think they could charge $6 for a coffee because it looks more custom because they're bouncing all over the place.
Right.
Right. And then you could add the assembly line Starbucks in. What waste or magic that's maybe not necessarily the most efficient have you seen preserved? Or have you seen anybody kill something in the sake of efficiency that just hurt the business?
That's a tough one. I think one way to preserve the magic is to start filming what you do and putting it out there. It's just part of your standard marketing. Like, here's what we do. Like, I sold this vehicle wraps business. They do, they'll wrap Bugattis and Ferraris because sometimes you get a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. It's not fancy enough. You have to wrap it to make it fancy.
I was just going to say.
It's just what it is. It doesn't make sense to most people.
I hate crime.
Girl, sometimes you just have to make it fancier, right? And you're a creative person. You get that. So, and then they film, doing commercial wraps, and it's beautiful. So I think if you're filming your work and it's custom and it's beautiful and it's creative and you're building something, that's always going to win, right? That's always going to enhance what you're doing. If that's the answer you wanted.
Have you seen the guy
magic
on X? He does the decks, but I love that guy. That
Jameson,
guy.
Yeah.
What a cool story.
So fun.
Best hair I've ever seen on a dude. Big hair. He bounces around. He's filming the whole time. He's doing himself on CapCut. I would want that guy to build me a deck.
That's right.
I really would.
That's right. So why aren't people doing that more? So Joe Springsteen, he owns this company called Mallard Systems, and they do facilities maintenance in Orlando. And he'll film drone pressure washing. He has rappelling classes for his guys, and he teaches them how to rappel properly, safely. And so he has all of this going on. And
he does window washing?
Window washing, facilities maintenance, the state flower in Florida is mold and mildew. It's not like the dogwood or whatever. It's some there's mold and mildew everywhere in the state of Florida. It's an endless process to pressure wash. So he has this incredible facilities maintenance where they'll just really dress up and take care of a facility. Because otherwise, if you leave a facility alone, in 10 years, it's grown over with melaleuca and all sorts of vines and mold and green stuff everywhere. So he's filming and showing what he's doing. And I know he's growing the business. He's adding trucks, he's adding teams, and he's just awesome. It's awesome to watch. It's fun to be a part of something like that. I feel honored that I sold him that company. I called him I have something for you. I have something for you. This is perfect.
What if somebody that's going to listen to you ostensibly has never bought a business before? Hopefully they get inspired. What do you recommend somebody does before they try to jump in with both feet and start swapping NDAs? What do you recommend they do?
While I believe anybody can own a business, it doesn't necessarily mean everybody should own a business.
Okay.
So this goes back to self-awareness. I believe education matters. And you really need to go to some sort of buyer boot camp. You need to read a lot of books. I think you need to speak with a lot of business owners and do a deep dive. You know, there were some buyers that I met at the boot camp that I was speaking at yesterday, and they want a restoration business. And I said, well, have you ever worked in a restoration business? And I got this kind of like stiff, like, I'm like, can you tile? How about, have you demolished anything? Like you said, you've, flipped properties. Do you do any of the work? They've never touched a thing.
What made them want to buy a restoration business? It's highly cyclical. You're taking weather risk in the other direction.
They're just like smart guys, and this is my thesis. And the restoration business is a good business. And I like these guys. They're nice, and I think sellers would like them. I was like, listen, you're young. Go get a part-time job at a restoration business. See if you really like it.
They're done.
See if you like it.
It's very surprising.
It's so hard. And the thing about restoration business, it is a good business, but I do see a lot of people burn out because it's, emergency work. It's 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's hard work. You're dealing with flood, hurricanes, tornadoes, things exploding, things catching on fire, like a lot of problems. It's not a fun, happy business.
No,
you're dealing with people who are sad and crying and dealing with loss.
You're sleeping in your truck.
Right.
You're deploying to Florida, usually Florida or the South Coast.
Florida or Florida.
Florida, right.
We have a lot of problems.
We had a pretty good season last year. I was really
not in the restoration business.
Not in the rest. Well, it's
They
funny.
had a bad season.
They had a bad season.
Yeah.
I learned a long time ago, don't take weather risk. Luckily I saw somebody do that. There's a lot of levered restoration businesses that are not doing well right now because of last season in Florida, which is just wild to think about.
So like if somebody has never worked in a business, why not get a part-time job in a business? Like what you think you want.
Yeah.
Why not, if you think you want a lawn business, do you plant anything in your yard? Like, do you do anything in your yard? Have you like mowed a lawn before? Like, I don't mow, but I'll plant stuff.
Yep.
Right. There's certain things I will do. Right. And I'll trim a hedge, but mowing a lawn in July in Florida where bugs are jumping up at you, then there's a ton of moisture, then like the grass is growing every 6 days. Then it's super hot. Then you're dealing with rain. Then you're dealing with storms. Then like the mulch gets blown away somehow. There's all sorts of.
It's a lot of risk.
Yeah. And you have to understand, like, do you like this? So that's always my job, my suggestion for an individual buyer. Have you ever done anything in that space? If you all of a sudden want this restaurant, have you ever bussed tables? Have you ever been in hospitality of some sort? Because I think that that's an important element to really deliver hospitality well in a restaurant. Like one of my favorite books is that Unreasonable Hospitality. It's not my favorite book, but I recommend that to sellers all the time and buyers.
Unreasonable hospitality.
Unreasonable Hospitality.
What's the thesis of that book or this?
Well, it's 11 Madison Park, the restaurant in New York.
I heard this, the hot dog story.
Yes, the hot dog story, but it's more than that. It's like this. Cookies from around the world. So, I felt that. Right? Then dumplings from around the world because
every culture has a dumpling.
Every culture has a dumpling. And
Thank you.
Through it, and I was like, okay, which one speaks to me, right? And so we were talking about turkey earlier when we got coffee, and the Turkish dumpling in there looks incredible.
And
looks incredible.
Cooking is my. I just took a vacation to Thailand, and right after we were closed, we were actually closing because we were a day late. While it was going to San Francisco to Hong Kong, and I'm like trying to Wi-Fi. Lori, make the transfer. Make the transfer, and the dumplings. And so, I brought a bunch of Thai food back, and if I need to get out of email and out of my computer, I will print recipes so I don't have to look at my phone,
right?
And then just cook, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to think about anything else. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dumplings around the world.
So, my husband is gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free. So, from a dessert perspective, you end up making a vegan dessert. So I've made like some disgusting vegan desserts, like really like you have to throw them in the trash. Like it's really hard to not make something with like a gorgeous egg and milk and cream and butter and all those things, flour. But I do have one dessert that's like masterful. It's this like chocolate peanut butter pudding. It's like bananas, dates, homemade almond milk with avocado, and then cacao blended together. And that's like winning. Like even non-vegans are like, what is this? And they're like, eating it. But, so we don't make a lot of cookies in the house, unfortunately, although it probably helps, with a middle-aged person.
If you ever go to the city, hopefully it's still there. There's a restaurant called Senza Gluten, and a friend of mine's wife, I took her there, and she didn't have gluten in you. She was really had celiac, not like, and I haven't had the Thanksgiving belly in 20 years.
Yeah,
and she was just eating everything, and it wasn't just a good Italian, like a good gluten-free Italian restaurant. It was a good restaurant.
Wow,
you didn't even know it was. I would bet he could eat there very well.
One of my favorite restaurants that is, kind of in that, direction. And we're like flexitarians, like we eat, meat and we eat vegetables. But there's this place, Christopher's Kitchen. It's in West Palm Beach off of LPGA. God,
I'm gonna have to.
I love Christopher's Kitchen. Everybody looks good. Even the old people look good. Like everybody looks good who's eating at Christopher's Kitchen. This guy is just magical. He's just fantastic.
All right, we've been going for over an hour.
Oh.
It's felt like no time. I've got a few follow-up questions.
Okay.
So, what is the hardest truth that buyers in that size range you look at need to accept before they start sending out LOIs?
I think the truth that the deal is not going to be perfect, and they're going to have to suspend a portion of reality on some level and believe that what they're seeing is real, what they're seeing is true, that they've mitigated risk as much as they can, and then the belief in themselves that they can do this. I think for individual buyers, that's the hardest part.
So building on that, I always worry about the founder risk. I'd never worked with getting deals done with a founder. It was usually a secondary buyout, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that the founder is as important as people believe they are, or do you think they're less important to the business? Like people tend to do, I think John Capel said this to me, people do business with companies, not really with founders. And at some point, if you're big enough, even it doesn't have to be 10 million EBITDA, that the founder, usually everything's okay when the founder goes away. Do you agree with that or not?
I would say in a sub $10 million deal, sub 10 million EBITDA deal, the founder is still vital. Not always. In my larger deal, the founder is really kind of behind the scenes, very minimally, and just kind of working a little bit of magic here and there. But I think a lot of times the founder is the crux of the deal. And that's the problem with small business, is you have to have somebody take over what their duties are. And those aren't always necessarily defined. That they met some guy in the golf course and that's like a portion of their business. And then they met some guy in Rotary and that's a portion of the business. Some of these relationships. And that's where preserving legacy matters and really doing a deep transition.
What's the right transition period? What's the right way to transition? Like if you had to sketch on a whiteboard, this is my transition playbook. You're not going to lose your customers if you do this. The ops is going to keep going. What's that look like?
Transition is different for every business.
Okay, fair enough.
And I feel that some businesses could be transferred in 30 days and some businesses need a year. And
is that a section of your sim?
Yes. I always put that.
I've never seen it before.
Well,
never seen it before. We'll look in a second.
We'll look, see if I have something like that.
Interesting.
You have to talk about transition or at least have a verbal conversation about it. Like what the seller
do that,
does.
but I've never seen it in print.
Yeah, sometimes we write I'll write the seller will stay on for like a certain amount. Okay, there's transition and then there's the seller working for you. So transition is, let's say, an 8-week period where the whole time they're downloading information. Yep. Where it gets tricky is if the seller is working in the business. Now they have an added job. It's very stressful. They're transitioning and teaching while still doing their whole job. So if the seller does not have a deep team, it can be really a hard transition and take longer. And if they're not organized, they don't have a playbook, they don't have SOPs, they don't have all of their, contacts, vendors, suppliers, customers organized in a meaningful way, also difficult. So it depends upon how well the business is positioned. And we talk about that.
Interesting. We traded notes about absentee businesses. I thought that was an oxymoron. I maybe I'm naive, but I'd never heard of an absentee business transacting. It's always a founder or professional management team.
Okay. Yeah, you can have an absentee-owned business, but here's some of the problems. When you really have an absentee-owned business, and I did one last year and I did another one the year before, but the one last year, the buyer didn't realize how absentee the seller was. So when we needed stuff, they couldn't find it. They had to ask other people, and it wasn't like traced well. Or the seller would say, here, log into my back end here and download whatever you want. And it really was absentee. The seller would go on vacation, the seller would be out of town, the seller ran a number of other businesses, and it made the transaction a little bit harder because they were not in it.
Well, they had to bring somebody to the tent too, right?
Then there was another deal I did the year before. Same thing. The seller came in 1 day a week from the beach, right, to just kind of write checks. And they had desktop. They had 2017 QuickBooks desktop they ran this business on. It was insane. And they would do their financials quarterly, which also made me bananas. That was also absentee, and they were not in touch with a lot of the actual systems. And some of their head people had deep knowledge, and they didn't have a playbook, SOPs, they didn't have the systems written down. So for the new owner to take over was very challenging. So yes, sometimes you can have an absentee business, but there's other problems with that. Now, when you have a management team that's a true management team, it'll be run more professionally. But a lot of companies don't get to that until they're at like 5 million EBITDA.
Yeah, because you just don't have you just can't afford it.
You can't afford it.
When I was 12 years old, my mom kicked me out of summer vacation and got me a job moving furniture in North Carolina in the 85, 90 degree heat. And I also got the privilege of being the janitor because they saved somebody that way, and learned how to use a floor buffer. And there was this office down there. The guy running the company, I forget his name, but at the office, I'll never forget this. His name was Mr. Kinlaw. Mr. Kinlaw had an office with yacht magazines on it and golf magazines on it. And that I never saw that light turn on the entire first summer. I saw it turn on. She made me do it the second summer. I was 13, 14. I saw it on one time. And I haven't thought about that since we had the discussion about absentee owner. That guy owned that business. He didn't do anything. But I guess my question is, why would somebody want to buy an absentee business and not work in it? Why wouldn't they just buy some real estate?
Your margins are way better.
Well, fair enough.
Your deal structure, I mean, the amount of money you can make buying a business, right? If I sell, let's say you could find a $2 million property. Okay, let's say you could find something that made money. You'd be lucky if that made $100 grand after taxes. Yep. Lucky. $2 million business with some work, minimal, you can make $500,000.
That's true.
Okay, so you're amplifying your return dramatically with a little bit of work. So like, let's say you take that $2 million deal with $500,000 EBITDA, and you work and you build that up to $1 million EBITDA, and then you sell it for 4x. Right? Let's say you just keep the same multiple.
You're getting multiple in size.
Let's say you just sell it for the same 4x, but then let's say you get smarter and you start doing multiple arbitrage. You're buying stuff for 3 and 4x, and then you're selling it for 7, 8x. Once you build up, over 5 million EBITDA, or you get to 10 million EBITDA, that's another level of multiple that you can then transact. So the multiple arbitrage is real, and that's a play that's way better you can do than in real estate.
Okay. Do you also are you only representing sellers, or are you representing buyers too?
I used to have more time and I could represent buyers. I just can't. And there's so many of them. Sometimes I'll get 30 to 50 outreaches a week of people. Oh, I'd love to just pick your brain. First of all, I don't like anything picked of mine personally, but I definitely don't want my brain picked. Feel free to ask me some questions. So sometimes I'll just say to people, hey, do you have just a couple questions? Maybe I can answer that for you. I can't spend a half hour, an hour, 2 hours with everybody. Sometimes I'll be able to talk to 1 or 2 people new a week, but then I have buyers coming in on my deals that I have to interact with. I need to run my deals. When you work with a buyer, you have the option of maybe selling them something, but probably not, right? 80% of buyers never buy anything. If you have a business, and I know how to pick good businesses,
you can just do something.
Right.
It's going to transact.
But honestly, that's how I did so many deals, right? People want to know, how did I do 400 transactions? Well, I sold other people's deals.
That they couldn't get sold.
Either they couldn't get sold, or I can sell them faster because I'm matchmaking. Joe Springsteen's deal was with another buyer. With another broker.
Okay.
I saw that deal, and that broker knows I will run the whole deal. He can just sit back. I'll do the whole thing. Right? I'll do the whole thing. And he's an awesome guy. This broker's a really nice guy. He's always been nice to me. And I saw that deal and I bulldozed, like I just like went full force and made sure that Joe got a meeting, made sure he got what he needed, and helped him the whole way. But it's fun. And I knew Joe from, again, SM boot camp. So I knew him. He was an Orlando guy. I'm in Orlando. And I just liked him personally. Like he had lived in Asia. He was an attorney for a time. He had done a portion of facilities maintenance. So he kind of understood what he was getting. He was a really interesting guy. He was like a pleasure to work with.
Yep.
So a buyer like that, I can work with. He wasn't demanding, like, I need this, Jackie. Like, it was just a pleasure to do a deal with him. And it's like a pleasure to watch him succeed.
There's a book I recently read called Ridiculously Easy to Do Business With. Have you read this one?
No, I love
It's
that.
I saw him speak to at the dental lab conference, and it should just flow. Everything should flow.
Yeah.
Through that. How big is your team?
Oh, I have one employee.
One employee.
And my younger brother is my business partner. He joined me in 2004 when I started, and he had never sold a company. So I had to like kind of just,
Threw him in the
yeah,
works.
I mean, and he's super smart. He had his master's from UF, and we've worked together as a team for 21 years. So it's just kind of us. And we have very complementary talents, and I enjoy him as a person. Like my brother's one of my best friends, and he's a lot of fun. He's super funny. He makes jokes about everything. He will do a roll of puns that's insane. Sometimes I think he missed his calling and he should have been in like improv or stand up. Like sometimes I feel bad that he sells companies for a living, but he's done exceptionally well. And he has a beautiful wife and a beautiful child. He's a new baby, like she's not even a year. And awesome. But he's working hard. He's 45 with a new baby. Like it's rough. But he's just awesome. So that's my team. And then, I have a graphic designer on staff, and we'll like piecemeal it, if we need extra help. But no, I don't like do a newsletter.
You're not writing Sims yourself, are you?
Sure I am.
Wow.
Custom. Bespoke.
You don't trust anybody to do it.
My employee now will help.
We'll help that. Okay.
But no.
It's one employee and your brother.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever, this last one, then my always last question. Have you ever had a business hit your desk and go, I should buy this one?
Oh, yeah.
How many of those have there been?
Okay, for first, your spouse has to be on board. Okay, so like there's that. So I would say every couple years something comes across my desk. I'm like,
like what? What was the one that was like? And did you ever not? I mean, clearly you didn't. I don't think you did one. But the you like, I really should have done that one. And then like the buyer just made out like a fat cat.
Okay, so I think I'll go back to an older one before I met Michael.
Okay.
So that like I'm not like pinpointing anything, but like this is before I met Michael. I sold the company that produces the cotton candy for Universal Studios.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I just loved that business. I still love that business, but I didn't feel like I was serving humanity by manufacturing cotton candy. Like that was ultimately why I didn't do it. I'm like, I shouldn't be eating this. Other people shouldn't be eating this. Like, it's why I wouldn't like.
Wait, what year was this?
Oh God, this would have been like
05?
Yeah, maybe. Let me think. I think it was 2003.
You invented ESG.
Yeah.
I can't do this one.
But at the time, the amount of money that the company was making, I was making more as a broker.
Yeah.
I was free. I didn't have employees. I wasn't married. I wasn't having an easy time dating. Like I wanted to get married and have kids. So like, I didn't think that was the right path for me. And I love to travel. I've been to, 35 countries, and I traveled a lot as a single person to, see the world, and just one trip at a time. I never did like that Euro trip that people do.
I want to go to one spot
Yeah.
now. I tried that once. I didn't like it. 3 days in a city I didn't like it.
You just go one place.
All right. My last question I ask everybody. What is the book that you've read in your life that's been the most impactful? Only one.
Okay. Well, so I heard your other episodes.
I
have a copy for you.
I have not read that.
Okay. So Letting Go.
Okay.
Now, there's many books that have been impactful. I do try and read as much as I can. I'm a bit of a slow reader, but I do read as much as I can. I try and read this every couple years.
Okay.
There's no handbook, and this book should be taught in high school. There's no handbook on trauma and how to heal from trauma, how to deal with trauma. And everybody has it. Like everybody has deep trauma that they've encountered. And trauma is generational. And I think about like my dad's from Shanghai. And sometimes I'd leave the house. He's like, can you run in those shoes? Okay. And you're like, why do I need to run in heels? But my dad wanted to make sure I could run because one time he got stuck outside as a kid when they were bombing and he had to run.
Whoa.
And this is what I'm talking about, generational trauma that's then transferred to your child. About now your child believes everywhere they go, they have to have shoes they can run in, right? So like, it's those types of little things, but there are bigger things that people transfer to their kids. And there are things in society that are transferred to you. So you then have to ask yourself, what's real? What's really impacting me? How am I digesting this? How do I let this emotion move through my body and exit, right? And really digest it so those aren't getting trapped in your body. But managing trauma and healing that within you will then help other people heal themselves.
Yep.
So there's a psychology belief that like hurting people hurt people.
Yep.
Well, I believe if you're healing, you're always in a process of healing. Healing people can heal people.
Fair enough.
Right? Why can't that be true also? So, Dr. David Hawkins, they say this was his finest work before he passed away. And it goes through different levels of vibration of thought and feelings. So like shame would be like a low emotion and love would be the highest emotion. And then you think about that even biblically, then you go into love thy enemy. So you can even love your enemy, right? And meet them with love. And the only way you'll understand them and be able to work with them is through love. It's not always easy. But this book reminds me of like things that I can do within myself because you can't change others, but you can change and others can change. I do believe that. But you can heal things within yourself to help you be a better steward of life in the world.
How old were you when you read that book first time?
The first book I read by Dr. David Hawkins was Truth versus Falsehood. And I probably read that when I was like, I want to say like 33.
Okay.
So a while ago. I would say I got letting go maybe when I was 40.
40. Okay. I'm 6 years late now.
You're not late.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Where do we get in touch with you? I have a strange feeling your inbound's about to go up.
It'll be fun. So I'm on LinkedIn, Jackie Alson Hirsch.
Okay.
And then I'm on X, Jackie Hirsch _ because I don't have Jackie Hirsch.
I'm sure you can get it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I looked at that account and I'm like, I'm not sure if I need that. So Jackie Hirsch _ is fine. And then, of course, Crown Atlantic. You can reach me inbound on the website. But
Jackie, it's been an absolute pleasure. We're going to do this again in a year. This is the first time I've watched that. We're going to do this again in a year.
Okay.
Hopefully we've sold 20 more. How many businesses you sell a year?
I would say it's like between 8 and 15.
8
I would say like an average is 12. And people are like, oh, you're doing one a month. I'm like, no, it's like 7 in 1 month. And then like 3 and then one random one throughout the year. It's never, cohesive. It's always.
We talked to pre-call. You said you have a glitch. You just can't stop working either.
I can't. I relate to my sellers. They're like racehorses, on a track. And you sometimes can't take the racehorse off the track. You got to walk them out a bit.
It's like a Belgian Malinois, right? You just got to make sure they get exercise today. Jackie, it's been super pleasure.
It's an honor.
I guess I'm going to go to the airport now, and I know what I'm doing on the plane is reading the book. Thank you very much for the gifts. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Lever Up. We trust today's conversation provided meaningful insights into private equity and entrepreneurship. Stay connected by subscribing to our podcast for upcoming episodes.